The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
O Adonai, Holy Trinity, in your omnipotence we find courage, in your omniscience we find wisdom, in your omnipresence we will never be alone. Amen. You may be seated. But I say to you that listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. Very hard passage on a beautiful day. Today is All Saints' Day. And All Saints' Day is this great commemoration of the church when we recognize all of the saints. We remember all of the saints. And most of us, when we think of saints, we think of St. Luke, who wrote that gospel passage. We think of St. Paul, who wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. We think of St. Peter, right, the rock on which I will build my church. We think of St. Francis and the great work that he did to call the Catholic Church back to holiness. We think of St. Dominic and his great preaching. We think of St. Augustine and his great theology. We think of St. Therese of Lisieux, who prayed for the world and it was changed. We think of St. Teresa of Avila. We think of all kinds of saints and all kinds of people, and we forget that we're all saints. Because one of the great struggles of Christianity is to remember that we are all saints. All that means is we are all those who have been sanctified. We have been made holy. We aren't holy in ourselves. Neither was St. Francis or St. Nicholas. Neither was St. Paul or St. Peter. Neither was any of them. They weren't holy in themselves. They were made holy. They were made holy by someone else, by none less than God. That in Jesus Christ, in the cross of Jesus Christ, we have been sanctified and set apart for God. And all that means is that we are now called saints. And the great struggle with Christianity has been is that then we've got to recognize who the real saints are, the good saints, the real holy saints. And we go into this list of who's better and who's worse. And we get this kind of competitiveness going. And so we make doctrines, right? Well, you were baptized as an infant, and that's great. But if you've been baptized by the Holy Spirit, that's who the real Christians are. And yeah, you might show your faith in what you believe and what you can say, but what do your works say? Remember what St. James said in his epistle, right? Faith without works is dead. And are your works showing enough of the faith that you believe? Over and over again, we create this kind of weird, strange Christian pecking order. And we forget that our holiness is not something that we come by naturally. It is nothing more than a gift of God, which is suitable for us, because each and every one of you is a gift of God. A gift of God given to the world as a reminder that God loves it. You are a reminder to the world that God is absolutely in love with everything and everyone that God has created. A gift given. It's why we have bricks outside. It's why we commemorate those who have died. It's why we have all the things that we do and why we celebrate All Saints' Day. So today we're going to look at the saints' consolation. We're going to look at the saints' desolation. And finally, we are going to remember what it means to be a saint who listens to the voice of God calling to them. This passage is hard. Blessed are you who are poor. He doesn't go Matthew's route. Luke takes it, just cleans up. He says, look, poor in spirit, forget about that. Blessed are you who are poor, for you don't have enough money. Now, I've felt times when I've, blown it and, bounced a check or something like that. Jesus isn't saying, blessed are you when you act like you're poor. Jesus is saying, blessed are you who are poor. He's talking about the people in Haiti right now who are living on $2 to $4 a day. He's talking about people in Somalia who are struggling for every bit of food that they have. He's talking about those people, and he's saying, blessed are you. Happy are you. Now, Matthew's going to try and change it when we look at this gospel next year, starting in Advent coming up. If you've been following us in the introduction to Matthew in Sunday school at 9 o'clock, every place is I'll be there. or that Matthew's trying to remind all of us that at some corner of the human heart is an enormous amount of poverty that is there, and that we've got to reconcile ourselves to that reality. But Luke is saying there is an economic reality, and those who are poor will be made rich in heaven. Those who are hungry will be fed in heaven, and those who are struggling right now, their struggles will find a Sabbath rest in heaven. And woe to you who have found your consolation now in all that you have done. The saints' consolation is not in their pocketbook or in the money that they have or in the money that they don't have. The saints' consolation, God is trying to tell us through Jesus' words here, through Luke's gospel, is to say, rely on me. Your survival depends on me. Not on the strategic games you play with your money. Before everything else, I am, Jesus says. And I had you in mind. Your consolation is in me. And all of them, all of those people who only have me, have figured out a way of life that you could emulate. All of those people who have found only me and don't have the money that you have, don't have the privileges that you have, don't have all of the things that you have, can teach you how to live with me. The saint's consolation is nothing more than God. The saint's desolation, that is when they have been relying on everything but God. We all know that game. I play it all the time, guys. Just about to pay off my student loans. Once I get those paid off, and then I'm going to continue working on my retirement, continue putting away money for college for my kids, continue to maybe do long-term health insurance just in case, and we find health insurance, and then find all of these other things that all of us need to do, and all of us do, to our benefit, and to make our lives a little easier, our survival a little bit more assured. But at the end of the day, I get caught up in all the games that I play with money, and all the games that I play to try and make sure that my kids have everything that I didn't have, and all the stuff that's there, and all the good things of what it means to be a person in this community and in this world. But I forget, first and foremost, God has made me for himself, and for his good pleasure, and for the blessing of those around me. Whether my kids go to college or not, whether I'm in debt to the end of my life or I get out of debt today, whether I have all the money in the world or whether I have none at all, that stuff doesn't change. But sometimes, a lot of the time, I rely on all of that more than I do on God. And I can tell you, being someone who's lost a job, there's nothing more terrifying than that. Than being a man who has to provide for his family and all those things and having no income and recognizing not knowing where the next dollar will come from. It is scary as all get out. And it's in the silence that I get from all of those job rejections that I had, that God speaks into that silence. He says, I'm still here. Same as when you were flourishing. Same as when you had everything you thought you had. You just couldn't hear me. Because your mind was elsewhere. The saint's desolation is when we have it all and we forget about Jesus. When we've got it all ready for us and we forget. And many of you are here and commemorating people who have gone before. Remembering the saints who have died and the faithful departed who we'll read at the end of the service. When you remember in your grief, I hope that there were times when God was able to speak to you in the pain that you were living through. Because there are moments where we realize what we've been And it's not for a bank account. It's not for all of the money in the world or anything like that. It is for the relationships that God has given us. It is for the love that God has shared with us. And He shares that love with the world through you. Because everything's a gift, guys. We work hard for a lot of the stuff that we have, but everything else is a gift. Because beyond anything else, you are a gift that has been given to the world. And that's what God calls you to listen to. A gift that has been given to the world so that you might come into the world and share that gift with it. Because God says, I have created a kingdom. And you might have made a kingdom for yourself out of everything that you have made, out of everything, of all the money that you've had, all the time that you've spent on it. You've created little kingdoms of your own. And God says, that's great. You've blessed a lot of people in doing that. But can you open the door? And can you step out in faith to the kingdom that I've created? And not let your own kingdom eclipse what I have made. Because I've made it for your well-being, the well-being of the world. For your happiness. Not the happiness we get when we see a funny movie that's a little parallel, but the happiness that we get from the end of a good life. A good life that God has made for you. That's what today is about, on All Souls Day and everything else. Because God says, I have made you holy already. I have given you everything as a gift. How are you going to live? How are you going to practice the life that you have been given? How are you going to practice the life that you want to live? How are you going to live into all that God has given you? These are questions only you can answer. But they're questions that God has brought up into your mind today. Because God has called you here today. Called you out of your normal daily routines to come here and to hear His Word. And to hear the Word that He has given you. Here's the Word. You are a gift to the world. Given to the world as a blessing. So that the world might understand that it is loved. And the only way that it will find freedom is through the love that God has for it. Orbit your life around that